Joining. Thanks for everybody for joining. Love to get a little bit audience participation here. If you guys are so inclined, we have a chat feature you guys can use. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead and chat, ask questions. We'll try to answer those as they come up. We do have a QA section as well. If you have a longer question you want to ask or something a little bit more detailed, go ahead and fill in the QA section. Be happy to take those as we go and answer those either as we can throughout the presentation, or we do have a QA section at the end where Tim and John will be answering your questions. So feel free at any time to go ahead and fill in information there. As everybody's kind of getting warmed up for the day, hopefully everybody's kind of back, fired up, ready to be at work. I know it was a little bit of a struggle to get out of bed this morning after a long weekend. I definitely appreciate everybody being here. And if you're coming from the home office, if you're working from an actual office, if you're watching this offline with your toes in the sand, good on you. Thank you for watching us, and make sure you get some sunscreen on there. We're going to go ahead and kick off our presentation today. Just a few housekeeping items to take care of before we get going. For everybody joining us, first again, thanks. There is the chat. There is the QA feature there. If you do have things, feel free to ask as we go along here. We have two different co-hosts with us today. The Nuts and Bolts series is really about helping you guys, right? Helping you guys to understand some of the technology partners that TapClicks works with, the integrations that we have with our system, and why they're so successful in what they do, and why it was so important for us to integrate them with our systems, and what you can do to leverage those to get better results out of all the things that you're doing. So Nuts and Bolts really is about rolling up our sleeves, diving into the details, and showing you guys kind of great new opportunities that are out there, new features, new technologies that we think are really going to benefit you in your day-to-day activities with your clients, with the brands you deal with, etc. So thanks everybody for coming and going from there. At the end, like I said, there's going to be QA at the end as well. But after this, we are recording this, and so we will be sending this out to everybody who registered. So if you didn't catch something, you have to leave early. Don't feel bad about it. We will send you a recording of this afterwards, and there is a special one-time only offer that will be coming out in that email. We'll reference that a little later on as well. So anyway, let's just go ahead and dive right into it. We have Tim and John here. Tim represents iovox as a CRO. He is in charge of all great things regarding iovox, and I think if you're not familiar with iovox, you will be very, very soon here. But as the title says, we're talking about 100% attribution, and iovox is the way that we're really bringing that to you guys today. They make phone calls useful, valuable, and actionable. I think that's three very great adjectives to describe what they do, and we'll dive into some details there. John is joining us from Level7, and when John is not helping kids with offensive line tactics or defensive line tactics, he's heading up Level7 agency that really helps connect people with brands in really unique and specific ways using innovation at every step along the way. So John is going to be bringing his vast experience and knowledge and creativity to bear against the call solutions we're talking about today. He's going to present kind of from an agency perspective and a brand perspective how some of these technologies work and how everybody can benefit from them. So John, Tim, thanks guys for coming today. We're super excited to jump into this with you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course.
Glad to be here.
So you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. Over the weekend, I went back into the 80s archives, and so you'll see a few of these 80s references come out, maybe 70s references. We went deep into the archives for you guys today. So I hope you enjoy them if you get the references. But old school, new school, really, what we're talking about today is attribution, but there's always so many different ways to look at it. For most agencies, taking time to really delve into the details of their brands, not their brands, the campaigns, is really what they're all about. And for brands, connecting up with their customers through a phone call or through some sort of personal engagement is really critical, with a lot of them making sales. We're in e-commerce now, and so much of e-commerce is done in a touchless environment, but there are some longer sale processes that really require that hands-on personal one-on-one relationship to build those sales to work them through the funnel. And with so much emphasis placed on digital attribution and time spent on emails and videos and social media, et cetera, we're always looking at other ways of building models into your current campaigns that help you close more business. Call tracking is one of those ways that we think is really going to be, I don't want to say innovative because calls have been around forever, right? That's the old school, new school thing. But the way that iovox brings their new attribution technology to bear against the old school calling methodology, I think is going to be really interesting and a real eye opener to everybody here and who's watching on how this can be implemented across the board to make massive changes in your attribution and in the conversion numbers that you're looking at. If you guys are new to this series, Nuts and Bolts is really where we offer insights into the importance of new things that we're bringing to market and new metrics and new opportunities. So thank you all for joining. And thanks you guys for joining again here with us. So that's where we are on the kind of format for this. With calls, one of the things that we think about most often is kind of the robocalling thing and bringing things to the market and calls that we're not really excited about. But just like email, calls are something that are really critical. And in this world of digital, right, the ability to track calls, I think, is one of the most important things. We have all these things that lead up to the conversion process, right? We've got banners, we've got ads, we've got all different kinds of things. And then it gets to the phone call, and then most of our models just break down entirely. We have no recording of the call. It's like everything leads up to the call, and then there's this huge black box, and then the call, and then the deal closes somewhere. And that black box is really what we're trying to explore and look at today, right? What happens in that call? What can we do to make those details more actionable, more visible, more trackable, so that we can apply the proper attribution to it? Because we always like to joke here, if last click attribution was the only thing that really mattered, then 100% of all of our budgets would go into Google and nothing would be spent anywhere else. That's not the truth, right? We all know that there's a process that people go through in buying something from us, right? The funnel, they move their way down through learning and experiencing. So the call tracking, the calling aspect of it is one of those interesting things. Tim, from iovox's standpoint, how do you guys present calls into digital agencies when they're like, well, isn't call banks and all that kind of stuff old school? Don't you have like people with headphones and things you like plug into the wall? So when you're talking, how do you help them understand the old school, new school aspect of what iovox is trying to accomplish with calls?
Yeah, sure. And it's something that's still pretty common too. And believe it or not, the easiest way to describe what we do is we're like Google Analytics for phone calls. And when you think about that, traditional call tracking that's been around for 25, almost 30 years is you simply assign unique or local numbers to each different ad source or each different channel, basically, that you want to track. And different variations of that, whether it's traditional one-to-one static numbers, which would be one number per campaign, or dynamic numbers where it replaces the number out per either user session or source space. But when we're getting into the full picture, that also causes other problems because the nature of spammers and things of that too, where they're going to, I'm sure, Kevin, you've received a number of different spam calls on your cell phone, and John, today, I'm sure I probably had 5 or 6 today. Now imagine if you had tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of numbers for your clients, right? So it can be an issue. And there's spam protection and things like that. But one of the biggest things that we've learned is that we build products and develop services based off of client needs and client requests. And the biggest thing that we look at when dealing with the new digital agency is, number one, make sure you turn the lights on. How are you getting credit for everything that you generate? One of the probably best examples we have is a client in the UK. Is the number 1 or 2, depending on who you ask, largest property portal. And they were getting a 2-to-1 call to kind of web form submission that they weren't getting credit for. So once they actually got the data, saw what's going on from a call perspective, it made a lot of sense to say, okay, let's get some more visibility into what's actually happening. So usually it starts something as simple as that, as Google Analytics for phone calls, understand their current situation, and then really deep dive into specific customized solutions for our clients that relates to either client retention improving branding, which we can touch base on, or really the most common one is how do we grow revenue, right? Which is what it's all about, is growing our businesses.
Yeah. So, John, yeah, this is the next question, right? Is anybody out there? Does anybody actually answer their phones anymore? You guys have worked with so many different channels, and brands in different channels. Are people answering the phones? Is this part of what you're going out to market with? Can you give us a little, maybe one or two examples of customers that have looked at phone calling as part of their overall plan and the successes they're having?
Yeah, it's funny. One of the primary, I guess, industries we serve at Level7 is the audiology industry. So hearing aids and hearing aid purchasers. So when we look at that market specifically, it's a much older market, right? So specifically, we had a client that didn't use any call tracking on any of their campaigns. They relied specifically on web forms and chat bots and things like that. Well, before call tracking, they came to us, they're like, okay, we've got these web forms, we've got these chat bots. We're converting right around 24% of those contact forms to an actual sale. They come to us, they're like, those aren't great numbers. And I said, guys, you have to look at the demographic specifically, right? The demographic, the average age of a hearing aid buyer is 74 years old. So when we look at that demographic, we go, okay, they are not native to contact forms and chatbots, right? They're native to phone calls. Hell, they probably remember the old turn dial phones, right?
Rotary.
Yeah, exactly. The old rotary phones. So, a really cool stat that we've seen after implementing call tracking for them, one, they're averaging right around 20, 25 calls a day with their call tracking because they've got, a fairly high budget and they're still getting, those contact forms and those chat bots. But the phone call close rate is actually 81%. So they've taken their close rate, from a contact form standpoint that was at 24%, and now they're at 81% with phone calls. So, I think it's a really good example of somebody, that wasn't considering call tracking as a necessity because the marketing department was run by much younger people. And, us really coming in, looking at the demographic and going, you know what? Call tracking is an absolute must for you, just because that demographic is not native to digital.
That's massive. 24. I mean, sometimes you implement something and you like, okay, well, I'm going to get a 5% boost or 10% boost.
Yep.
24% conversion to 81% conversion.
81. Yes.
Well, apparently people are listening, right? People are picking up the phone.
They absolutely are. Well, and I think if we look at it, Kevin, in this age of, everything's digital and nobody really talks face to face anymore, and things are, all done via text message and things like that. I think what's going to happen is, things are going to come full circle, right? Where people are going to want to have that human to human conversation instead of talking through a computer. So I think we're on the precipice of that right now, quite frankly.
One of the things we've talked about in this program before is kind of the new normal that we're in, where buying behaviors have changed so significantly. People aren't able to go out and do the things that they have done historically. Sometimes they're afraid to go out or they're restricted from going out. Tim, is this just for the long sales cycle, right? You and I have talked offline about, mortgages and things that do require kind of longer explanations, but it seems like this is for everybody in the new normal, not just some of the longer sales cycle things.
Well, it's longer sales cycle is one, but anytime it's a higher ticket item, like a vehicle or a property or a complex buying process, like we talked about with mortgage. So even though you do, not to name a name, but I guess we will, like a certain mortgage company that wants to do everything digitally and manually and make it so easy to be pre-approved. Well, at a certain point when they're doing the underwriting, they're going to need somebody to hold your hand and walk you through that process. It's becoming very obvious too that things have changed in our world, right? With the pandemic and everything going on, people working from home, and some of our, if not most of our largest customers are in that property or automotive portal / marketplace worlds. And they actually even switched last year from using browser information as far as eyeballs and viewers and things like that, people spending time on the sites, to calls to help forecast their businesses, because what they were seeing is there's a lot of bored browsers out there, people looking at cars, people looking at property, and they're sitting around just, playing around with a laptop. But the closest you're going to get to an actual conversion is a call, right? And it's always, it has been, and it continues to be. So when you actually want to confirm that a vehicle is there, or a home is still available, or, a mortgage, or if you want to speak to somebody at a medical practice or whatever it might be, you're going to phone somebody and you want to talk to somebody. So that hasn't changed. And it's really across the board, not just for those high ticket or complex situations, but anything that needs to be personal or people want to touch base on, from new acquisition to customer service to follow-ups. I mean, it just really is, it's always has been and still maintains to be one of the main forms of communication.
It seems like one of the things that has surfaced out of the pandemic is an increased need for customer service, high level, high touch customer service, because we're all so disconnected. And that is one thing where even strong e-commerce companies who have a real strong self-serve portal aren't successful unless they have that strong customer service component to it. And it seems like the phone interface is one of the strongest ways to have that personal connection with large organizations, becoming personalized, right? And extending that customer service feel, that personalized one-on-one experience down to the customer when they can't come into the store, they can't shake your hand, they can't, talk to you across the counter. They have to do something else. And another way of personalizing is through calls, like what you're talking about here. So this could work.
It also, Kevin, it also helps to circumvent some of the complex situations that we inadvertently set up as buyers, or sorry, as sellers, right? So we have multiple customers that, can give you two examples off the top of my head. One was a call center. And when the call would come in and they spoke 17 languages, the first one was press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, press 3 for, and people were hanging up. So inadvertently, even a call center kind of messed up, for lack of a better term, that customer experience, right? So there's different ways that you can address those solutions too, through call tracking and through services like iovox, which is we are able to identify the language they were browsing in, right? And they dealt with travel and things like that. So if you're browsing in French, we're able to connect you directly to a French speaking agent. So think about how many steps that took out. And that helped them to not just improve their connection rate, but improve their conversion rates and sales and so on and so forth. But there's simple things you can do in call tracking. That's not just the old rotary dial phones, but you apply the same kind of telephony, the same kind of technology to telephony experience to circumvent issues or complex buying situations.
Yeah, for sure. So as we move towards the iovox solution, I told you I was going to bring a reference to the 70s with $6 Million Man. I don't know if anybody gets that reference or not. So you guys are building something that's stronger, better, faster than historically was available. Talk to us a little bit about, and this is a question that just literally just came through the chat, some of the metrics, some of the key metrics that you guys are being able to bring forward as you claim are kind of the Google Analytics of the call tracking. And then I think one of the other key aspects we talked about offline was the low cost aspect to it. And I know we'll get into that a little bit more when you're doing the demo, but I think that's one of the hugest points that really struck me was the efficiencies that you bring, not only in kind of the upsell or increased sales that John talked about, going from 24% to 81% close ratio, but the cost of implementing new phone numbers, et cetera. So maybe two questions, right? Some of the analytics, and then maybe touch on phone number, I don't know what you call it now, creation or something like that.
Sure. So the first one, if you think about statistics too, I think one of the most underutilized statistics that we can look at is anybody that is generating multiple impressions for their clients are missing out on branding opportunities. So one of our clients is currently sending about 1.5 million whispers per month to their end user clients on behalf of one of their other to the end user client from a client, if that makes sense. And what we've done for them is we created, it's called a whisper feature. So this client originally was struggling with brand perception. They were also struggling with their trust scores and things like that too, that people didn't necessarily know this client. But what we've done is each and every time that phone rings to one of their agents, this is a real estate portal. So each time a real estate client picks up the phone and says, you have another great lead from our client, right? So as you look at that, that's an untapped resource for that client of 1.5 million times per month to brand their offering, and also to remind them who sent them that lead. For anybody that's worked in the multifamily housing space or property space too, you're familiar with cards when they say, how'd you hear about us? Did you hear about us? The first one is Google. Second one is, this site, that site, so on and so forth. Well, Google's always the number one. So if you switch the order and ask those questions again, it changes everything. So this is a way too that you can actually brand and build into their psyches that each time they're picking up the phone that you're getting credit, and really understand that those leads are coming from you, so that you can have different discussions when you talk to your clients, because they realize that. I think the other thing that we look at too is just from that customer journey as it comes down, and you look at impressions versus calls, and you look at conversions from each, or really dig into the kind of in-call analytics, which you can do through some of our speech analytics and conversational AI type products, is we generate leads that you're not getting credit for. Meaning if I call on a vehicle display page for, Auto Trader UK, which is one of our clients, on a 2010 Black Range Rover. Well, that Black Range Rover is sold. Okay, but we have a white one in stock. You want to see a white one? Great. So we can then share with them that we generated a lead that came outside of that particular listing. Few of the other stats that we can get into as well, and John, I'd love to hear from you as a client versus iovox talking about it. But you talked about low cost, and two of the biggest cost drivers, Kevin, in any call tracking provider, because we're not unique in supplying call tracking by any means. We just do it a little different. We pride ourselves on innovation. But our newest product, Webconnect, which we'll talk about today, what is again derived from our clients' request, who now have people working from home and they're making calls not just on a landline, but mostly it's a cell phone, or they text or chats or a tablet or a PC, and there was no way to necessarily make those calls. So we created this product, which is simply click a button and you put it on a screen, generates a real-time call, and gives you the ability to connect and have all the same functionalities as call tracking, recording, insights, which is our transcription features and things like that. But by eliminating the phone number, you eliminate one of the major cost drivers. So for example, any client that has, let's say 10,000, 100,000 numbers on a portal or a marketplace, or, your digital agency, 100,000 times anything is a big number, right? So that eliminates one of those big cost drivers. And the really nice part about it too, is it also aligns with most of our clients' revenue models, which is it's purely usage-based and foots to, nobody has an issue calling or paying for something when it's an actual lead that was generated, right? So even the end users. The other piece about it is it now opens it up from just, premier clients. If you have, let's say 10,000, or say you have 10 clients and 2 of them are your premium clients, you're willing to do more for them. This feature now allows you to open up to all your clients, right? So as you start adding buttons, it doesn't have an additional cost. So if you say 10 of my clients, here's their 300 numbers each, I'll pay for those, but I don't want to open this up to everybody else. Well, you're really losing attribution. You're also losing proof to talk to those clients to help retain those clients, but also put them in a new program and help increase their revenue and their traffic through additional services. So it's truly something that works not just from like a number perspective, but it works to expand that either quote share of a wallet with your clients or your full service offering across the board. And 2, it's a true global product. And some of these emerging markets that we deal with internationally can be extremely expensive for traditional call tracking. This is a product that works everywhere. We currently have numbers in 130 countries, and Webconnect opens up the rest of the world for us.
That's amazing, because having basically a free phone number means that from an agency perspective, agencies can recommend new places to put phone numbers that they've typically never put phone numbers before because of the cost aspect of it, right? So you're able to re-envision these web pages for your brands and for your customers and allow people to connect in locations on the site where they've never been able to connect before. So you're able to A/B test things in new and unique ways and bring that experience forward that has historically not been available. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yep. And we've actually run it against traditional numbers as well, where you have both. And we did see a lead increase of about 16%. So when you actually gave people options, great example of that too, which I thought was very cool, was we've all built sites for our clients. John, I know you have as well too when you're doing this, right? And on each one of them, we all have a contact us form. Well, as opposed to just having a traditional contact us form, you click, it opens up a landing page and you do a form fill and submits that way. What if we give the client 3 options? So you give the prospect 3 options. 1, click to connect immediately. 2, click to schedule a call back. And then we have another service that'll do that tied to the same button. Or 3, do the traditional form fill. These are different ways to improve communication and just open up to really what matters to the end user, which would be any of us, and we're used to working from home. Instead of me doing a form fill and hoping I get a call back, I can't tell you how many times I've done that now after working from home for 17 months. You press something on the screen, you click, and you're like, oh yeah, it doesn't work that way. Because we're also used to this, right? Zoom. We're used to Teams, we're used to WebEx or whatever form people use, Google Meet probably. But we're all conditioned to do that. So why not give that opportunity to the prospects through things like our contact us pages?
Yeah, and so often it's a big question mark, right? I fill out this form, I hit submit, and then it goes into a black hole. Am I ever going to get anything back from anybody ever? Or who knows where that goes, right? And especially if I have something that's more urgent, more pressing, a lot of the brands have brought the chatbot forward, but sometimes the chatbot implementation, if you're using full AI for that, is a little limited. And or you get somebody on there who may not be able to deal with your specific need. You want somebody on the phone. So now these brands have different options. That's fantastic. John, are you seeing that some of the brands you work with are putting phone numbers next to chat, or are there new and unique ways that you're being able to implement phone numbers now that you've traditionally not been able to do?
Well, like Tim was saying earlier, the Webconnect feature is one of those things, because I think, and Tim, you hit on this, the options for people, right? So, let's just talk about landing pages for a second, right? Historically, there's a contact form and there's only a contact form. In the agency space, there's a lot of talk about, you don't want other links in that landing page. You want one conversion point, because that's going to be it. Well, what we saw is if you only have that one conversion point, you're losing a lot of potential conversions, because maybe that's not what is native to them. Maybe that's not the way they want to interact with your brand. So what we've done is we've started to implement some of those Webconnect numbers, and then as well as, a chat on those landing pages. So kind of going against the traditional, convert on the contact form model, and have a couple of different points for them to contact on is, I think, important, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, you're a revolutionary, John. I don't even know what you just said right there. My mind is like blown at this point, right? Something else on a landing page besides the form field?
Besides a contact form. I know, it's a crazy concept.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. But that's what we're all about, is bringing kind of new and unique, innovative ways for people to connect. And this is definitely breaking that mold. So I'm super excited to bring this conversation to you guys. So we're at the point, Tim, if you're ready, just to kind of give a walkthrough of people on how easy it is to set up their campaigns in iovox. Are you ready to take over the steering wheel here?
I am.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing here and let you have at it.
All right, let me just go ahead and share here. So I thought what would be interesting to share here first is, first off, make sure you can see my screen. Can you guys see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And for everybody on there too, I apologize. I'm running 2 devices. I got headsets in, so if you don't see my face when I'm talking, it's because it's going through my phone, but not much to see here anyway. So, so the first thing I wanted to share too, in particular as it relates to Webconnect, because we're talking about how is 100% attribution even possible, right? So the first piece of that is when you think about traditional call tracking setup, what you're going to use is either set up a number behind the scenes, which we won't get too much into today, but with the Webconnect feature, other people have done things like dynamic number insertion, right? And there's 2 different flavors of dynamic number insertion, which one would be how to set up it source-based, which would say, hey, this came from Facebook or this came from Google or whatever it might be. The other one's session-based, is I want to know, Kevin came to me through, Google and these keywords, and here's a referring site, and this is where the last click attribution came in, right? So what Webconnect does and how this works, it's a simple line of code that you're seeing here that you put on your site, and this represents as a button, which I'll show you an example here in a second. As the button gets represented, any other key attribute or thing you'd want to know from that session, because we have the whole user ID and the whole user session captured in this feature, you can see, and you can eliminate the need for any kind of fuzzy logic. And usually how dynamic number replacement works is you create pools of phone numbers, and you have to have X number of phone numbers in the pool per user session, concurrent user session, so on and so forth. With this, straightforward, you add the button, you add the script, and you add whatever details you want to capture to this, and that's as simple as it is. You get some script per button. We set it up internally the same way as you would a phone number, and you can have all those same features. To see what it actually looks like, I have a demo page up here. I try to minimize our faces here so I can see it. This is just a site we created to showcase how it would look. You can make this look like a traditional call us. This could be a floating button to go with the screen. Gives you total flexibility and customizability, however you'd want it set up. So as the first example, and this will ring my cell phone, so we're not going to show that. You'd shows the phone number coming in. I'll stop that for a second. You simply click the button. You have the ability to, it's going to let the end user know, making a call to the agent. On the other side, it's going to say you have an iovox call from, if it's from this iovox site we created, or you have a call from whatever agency or however they want to generate it. You also have the ability in this scenario to create IVRs. So press 1 to connect for sales, press 2 to connect for customer service, 3 for however you want. So it gives you that same level of flexibility and customization of a traditional phone call. So as we dive into this, you can think of so many different ways that you could do this. So we're showing just a simple call us now feature, but again, any piece you'd want to know, how many bedrooms, location, if you want to know what they looked at before, I mean, you can gather all that information, add it to the script, it runs, and it's going to be able to connect and show you all that information.
That's great. And each of these buttons then is unique and individual and can be tracked uniquely and individually.
Correct. And that's where it really opens it up. We had a client in Cambodia where it's traditionally very expensive to run call tracking. They opened it up and put 5,000 different buttons on their site, which was very eye-opening for them and also very useful. We have another automotive client who's using theirs on 900 something different listings. And then we have somebody else who deals with healthcare internationally, where they have thousands of buttons too, which again opens it up to one, perfect attribution as it relates to that user session because you have everything they looked at. 2, you can now open it up to all your clients versus just a particular client or something very expensive. So for example, Kevin, you asked earlier, is this only for really high ticket or customized complex type solutions, right? Long sales cycles. Well, now with this button, this can open it up to more traditional marketplaces or more traditional clients that have a lower ticket item that, before you wouldn't be willing to kind of put that cost there. You'd be worried about it because again, you'd have transparency and people aren't going to be calling as much for lower ticket items. Well, now it gives you that transparency to see first, what are you generating? 2, if it's something you want to share with your clients, obviously you turn the lights on and make sure you guys are getting credit and all the attribution you deserve for what you're already putting out for them. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple on a demo, but again, you can visualize, and this could be a contact us form, a call now form. This could be associated to any component on a website that you want to track, potentially get a lift, or you can run it next directly to a number, which other clients do to give the prospect multiple options.
One of the questions that did just come through is this always a phone call, or can you have click to chat? Are you recording that as well?
Great question. And right now, iovox is definitely more of a communication company versus just a call tracking company. And we pride ourselves in particular around our API around call and call data, text, chat, email, right? So anything you can think of for this scenario, next that we're building out, because this is one of our newer features, is the ability to call or text, obviously chat, and then you can add any of our transcription solutions and conversational AI and apply that same logic to not just calls, because the call gets recorded, transcribed, and then gets applied, but same thing with text and chat and so on and so forth. So you can really dive into more of that in-call or in-conversation type data you're looking for. But then the last piece that we're going to be adding to this as well, and this really came from more of a healthcare client, they wanted to be able to track video conference. So how many times did I click to have telehealth or things like that? So really the sky's the limit, and it depends on what our clients want. I mean, that's what we, again, really pride ourselves on, is designing solutions that work for our clients based off their particular need versus creating something we think is cool and throwing it out there, and then nobody wants it, right? The old saying is like, you can have the best dog food in the world, the only problem is the dogs don't eat it. That's the same thing here, right? It's, we want to build cool stuff, and we build cool stuff based off what our clients are asking for, because that's what people are asking them for and what they need.
From an integration standpoint, customers are always wanting to capture more data. So you're capturing all the stuff that's coming through here. What is the output of this? Can they push into Salesforce? Can they push into HubSpot? Are there existing integrations there?
So we have a full open API. We already have integrations designed and built with HubSpot, Salesforce, Zoho, Microsoft, obviously TapClicks, right? So TapClicks, you name it, and anybody that can either push or pull with an API. And we have full REST API too, so it works with pretty much anything. It just sends some documentation, and if we don't have one in place, it's relatively simple to get it completed fairly quickly.
Awesome. Just out of curiosity, most of the agencies we're dealing with, and I think most of the people on the phone are US based, but we have customers that are international as well, and I'm sure a lot of the agencies have international customers. On the transcription piece, if you're dealing in multiple languages, it seems like that could get confusing pretty quickly in terms of transcribing it. Do you just have one language that it transcribes into, or can people set up multiple different transcriptions for that?
So we're originally based out of the UK, and we actually have offices in the UK and in Paris and in Sydney, Australia, and here in the US too. So I think it's in a crazy amount of languages we have, but we cover, I think it's in the 25, 30, some different kind of languages, but definitely other core languages for the EU, as well as the Americas and APAC. Awesome. So it shouldn't be an issue.
So you can translate if somebody calls in from Mississippi or from California with the accents?
Yes. And actually, transcription is a funny thing, and so is speech analytics in general too. And it's come so far in the last, I'd say, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
It's something, and I've been in this call tracking space for about 16 years, and it's something we've been trying to implement, as well as pretty much everybody else in the space, for multiple different reasons. But it's truly come so far, so fast in the last, I'd say, year and a half, 2 years. And I think our product is up there with the best of them. So we like to play with the transcriptions. It continues to learn and get better. And in particular, if you're dealing with healthcare and you got, things like dermatology and other things it's not used to hearing all the time. But it is very good.
That's awesome. All right. If you want to give me control back, I will go through the last slide here as we're getting closer to the end. Love the questions that are coming in, guys. If you have other questions, please go ahead and throw them on in there. Let's see if I can do this. No, that's not the right one.
I'm trying to.
No, that's not it either.
Yeah, but while you're looking for that too, if you want, I know John has some the actual reporting queued up too, if you wanted to see it.
Oh yeah, John, why don't you go ahead and show us what the output looks like there? That's fine.
All right, so let me get this here. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, and is it Tim? Is it the iovox dashboard that you see?
Yes, it is.
All right, awesome. Okay, so a lot of what we look at, and to give you guys a little bit of background on our agency in specific, most of our clients are in the audiology space. So hearing aids, we work with a lot of brands, Belltone, Miracle-Ear, Starkey Hearing. So, some big kind of international brands that we work with. And, one of the things that we pay attention to the most is engagement, right? So how long are people on the phone with the person that's answering the phone? So, this average talk time piece is something that we pay attention to very heavily. It's really easy within the dashboard to kind of look at, let's just say we want to look at August and see our average talk time in August. So it's 1 minute and 17 seconds. So really our sweet spot is 1 minute and 30 and over. So if we can keep people on the phone for 1 minute and 30 or over, it leads to a 68% appointment rate. So A lot of what we deal with is, like I said, it's audiology, right? So the people have to come into the office to be fitted for a hearing aid and things like that. So that appointment rate is something we look at very heavily, and the average talk time is a massive driver of that, right?
Right.
But as you can see by the dashboard here, everything is really pretty user friendly. The other thing we pay attention to a lot is the hangups. So let's look at the hangups for August, just for example. We hit 196 hangups, which, was up, 6.87% over the previous month. And really what we're looking at here is the phone ringing too long? Are people getting to the phone quickly enough to be able then to talk to the prospect and have a conversion? Is the voicemail not set up properly? We deal with a couple of hearing aid store owners that have, over 50 locations. So, managing each location becomes very difficult then. So those are things we try to help them out with. And then if we let's just dig into a specific customer here. We go through, and one of the things we do for our clients is we listen to all of the phone calls manually. So we use, Tim was mentioning the transcription service quite a bit. We use the transcription service, but then we also like to listen to the calls directly, because what we find is we find context in those phone calls, right? How is, the person that's answering the phone, are they friendly enough? Are they off-putting? And, it's hard being in this business because it makes for, some uncomfortable conversations with owners sometimes, and say, hey, let's Trina, for example, your West Jefferson location, there's a gal who's answering the phone there, that is losing prospects, right? So those are things we can help them out with too, because they don't necessarily have that kind of visibility. So, this is kind of the view we see on a customer to customer basis. So let's just look at Trina's numbers in August. And we can kind of see what she had in August in total calls. So she's one of our bigger clients. So she had about 136 total phone calls in August with 119 unique callers. Out of this, she had a down month in August. There's a couple different reasons for that, but one being, we changed some creative. So we got that creative switched out in September, and now we're starting to trend up a little bit. But again, call tracking is really at the core of what we do for our clients. And, if they're not answering calls the correct way, and if they're not fielding calls the correct way, it can lead to massive revenue declines for them.
So as that happens too, just a quick point, you can schedule alerts as well for any time through the call path, right? So if you wanted to be alerted, or it has a text or an email or whatever it is for whatever issue you might hear, it's either a hang up, or it's something where somebody mishandled a call, or if you hear something inside that contextual component, the contextual piece of the call as it relates to something did or did not happen during the call, you can alert either that location, yourself, or somebody in an escalation tree.
Yep. No, that's a good point, Tim. The automation is huge.
And John, it sounds like you're saying that this not only is helping businesses to close more sales, right, or conversions or appointments or whatever your metric happens to be, but it's also allowing you as an agency to help them identify blind spots they may not be aware of. Like you just said, a receptionist who's answering the phone and may not be presenting the company in the proper light, or may need to have an extra cup of coffee before she shows up or he shows up, right? Some of these little nuances that we don't see and don't translate in digital campaigns or other ways, this has the ability to expose as a major factor, right? Because there's so much that goes on with the sale. This is a significant component, right? When you're dealing with people.
Exactly. Well, and for just to give you guys some context too, if a phone call is off-putting or whatever, the most expensive pair of hearing aids that one of our customers sells is like $10,000. So they're a fairly high ticket item as well. So, when you look at a receptionist that Kevin, you referenced, that maybe in a bad mood on a day-to-day basis, we're able then to provide context and really, really grab that potential lost revenue, before it spirals really out of control. And I'll be honest, guys, this is a conversation we have, right now we have about 42 customers, on a month-to-month basis with us. We have this conversation twice a week. It's a conversation we have often. And what we've found is there's a lot of other agencies in the space that just are uncomfortable having that conversation. But the way we look at it is, it's like, okay, my job when you hire our agency on is I have to protect your revenue. So if I see something that isn't necessarily gaining you revenue, right? It's my job to then have a conversation with you about it, even though that is uncomfortable. And iovox is one of the things that allows us to do that.
I think from an agency perspective, it continues to justify your position with those clients, right? You're providing valuable services above and beyond what they may or may not have signed on for. And we all know that revenue comes in two forms, right? New revenue in the front door, and then churn. And churn is something that everybody's concerned about, but it often goes overlooked. And if you, as an agency, are able to protect your client on both avenues, I mean, you're definitely a leg up on the competition there.
Yep.
So not only does this, just kind of as we get to the end, it seems like this solution gives you guys as an agency listening in, or brands listening in, the ability to kind of have a new technology that allows you to close more business faster, better than before, but it also helps you to protect the business, and prevent churn, and look at areas where you may be weak, but don't even know that you're weak in. So, man, talk about a 360 solution. I think you guys knocked it out of the park with this. We were so happy to have you on and to be talking about everything here. Just as kind of wrapping this up at the very end, as self-serving as this is, right? TapClicks is here to provide service for you guys as well. So not only are you able to pull in all the details and information that we talked about here, but we can pull in all the rest of the data. Let's see if I can share this here, from all the rest of the campaigns into a single platform, into a single format for you guys as agencies. So to really help you get a 360 view of all of the different components and aspects of what you're looking at and how they're coming through. Couple last questions. John mentioned leads to higher appointments in audiology. Oh, for Tim, is there an industry benchmark for call tracking? So do you see like an average lift with your customers? Is there any kind of benchmarks you guys have done against that?
Yeah, and it really varies from industry to industry.
I would expect.
And different times that we've done it. But the one I referenced earlier, and again, just to kind of reiterate, if you haven't done call tracking yet, a lot of it is just turning the lights on and getting credit for what you already generate. So when we did this in property for one of the largest property portals, it was 2-to-1 leads came from phone calls. I've seen it as high as 3-to-1 in automotive. Now, that again varies from different areas of the world and different areas of the country, so on and so forth. But in general, the first piece is turn the lights on, get the numbers, get the data, because you'll be surprised what you already generate. Second piece of it too is you expand out, like you turn on SMS text capability. Again, I mentioned earlier, AutoTrader UK, which is one of the largest, if not the largest automotive portal in the world. They turned on and text enabled their numbers and got a 16% lift overall in traffic from something as large as the largest automotive portal. Other things that you can do too in that scenario too, you switch from toll free to local. Locals tend to do better with local businesses that you deal with, particularly with John, dealing with small businesses. People don't want to call it toll free, they want to call it a local number. You add all these things up.
Adds that other level of personalization.
And it just adds increase in not just traffic that you're going to see, but then you add things like Webconnect and other variations too. It's really going to be around improving conversion rates as well. So not only are you going to get a lift in overall traffic, depending on what industry it's in, but to the quality of traffic.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered it.
Yeah. And I think the last chat that came in is talking about law firms and and drawing towards, mass lawsuits, etc. I think that would be a natural as well, right? We see those mesothelioma, I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but the ads on TV, having a phone number, right? People dealing with medical issues, on-job issues, cancer type issues with law firms, having a phone number they can call that gives them that personal interaction probably is going to help with all those campaigns as well, especially if you're looking at a wide variety of locations, right? Lots of DMAs pulling in against those. Seems like that's right up your guys' alley.
Yeah, a lot of people have stayed away from that in the past, Kevin, for that and medical and a few other things too, because they're worried about like PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance. And with us too, again, the UK-based company, we're GDPR compliant, we're HIPAA compliant. We're used to dealing with companies like British Telecom and banks and, and all around the world, banks in France, banks of the UK, banks here. So we are set up to be compliant to work with scenarios like that, law firms, healthcare practices. So it's really important though that you deal with a system that does work in those spaces, because some of them could give access to people that shouldn't necessarily have access. So I guess that would be something just to make sure that you include in your research when you're picking a partner.
Yeah, perfect. Well, guys, that's what we have for you all today. Thank you so much, Tim and John, for coming. Really appreciated it. I think it was very fun to dig into something that's not a topic that I think is top of mind in our day-to-day conversations, but it should be. And this is really why we bring the nuts and bolts conversation to the different agencies that are out there. So I'm really thankful for your guys' time on it. Like I said at the beginning, everybody will get a copy of this afterwards. So if you wanted to share it around, you had additional questions, you can follow up with that. iovox has a very special promotional offer that'll go out in the email as well. It's massive, so make sure that you look for that email. It'll be out shortly after we're done compiling the video here for everybody. So thank you guys, and again, loved having you on, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks again, Kevin. Thanks, John. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.